This is the new 2026 Subaru Outback, and it's a lot different from before. It's been fully redesigned, and it's bigger, and the tech is better, and all the usual stuff, but it also looks different than before, a lot different. Today, I'm going to review the new Subaru Outback and show you all the big changes, and I'll take you on a tour of all of its quirks and features.
I want to tell you about something new we're doing that I'm actually really excited about. It's called Key, and it's a brand new channel from the team behind Cars and Bids. Now, obviously, on this channel, I review cars. That's not changing. Those videos aren't going anywhere. But there's a whole world of car culture out there that doesn't really fit into the normal Doug review format, and that's where Key comes in. The channel follows two members of the Cars and Bids team, Joe Barry and Ryan Lopez, as they go out into the car world chasing interesting stories. Think documentaries, travel films, crazy road trips, and big supercar adventures, the kind of stuff that every car enthusiast loves. They're visiting collections, meeting interesting people, and exploring car culture in a much bigger storytelling way. So, if you love cars, not just the specs, but the stories and adventures around them, you're going to want to check out Key. Subscribe to the channel and see what Joe and Ryan are getting into next. I'll be sending them on some insane adventures. Trust me, if you're a fan of this channel and Cars and Bids, you're gonna love it.
Alright, time for the quirks and features of the brand new, fully redesigned Subaru Outback, and let's start with some basics, a little history. So, the Outback debuted years ago as sort of an off-road, sort of SUV-ish alternative to Subaru's Legacy sedan. Now, as the years have gone on, the Legacy has actually disappeared entirely from Subaru's lineup, but the Outback lives on. It's always been hugely popular, and in fact, for a long time, it was Subaru's most popular car, although in recent years the Forester and the Crosstrek have given it a run for its money, depending on the exact year. Now, the Outback is fully redesigned for the 2026 model year, and you can clearly tell because this doesn't look anything like last year's Outback. Clearly, they've gone for a much more boxy, kind of purposeful, off-roader type of look compared to the previous Outback and kind of all previous Outback models that were a little softer, a little smoother, not quite as aggressive and in your face. In fact, this boxy off-roader look is kind of a surprise from Subaru because they're known for sort of a more gentle approach to styling, I guess you could say. Usually, Subarus and their owners aren't really trying to make a big statement, but that's exactly what it seems like this car is doing. Now, boxy has been popular in recent years. A lot of boxy, capable-looking off-roader style vehicles have seen major sales success. And that's clearly what Subaru is trying to go after with this car, but it's definitely a departure from sort of the friendly, smoother lines of Outback models from before. And it'll be interesting to see if Subaru buyers are ready to accept this sort of radical change in the look of the beloved Outback. Now, with that said, despite the design change, Subaru reminds us that they're still the same quirky, outdoorsy, approachable brand as always. For proof, you have to look no further than underneath the spoiler on the tailgate. In back, you can see there are all these images of the Outback doing things like carrying a canoe or a Christmas tree on top or a rooftop tent. But there's also images of it carrying a shark and a motorcycle over here, and you can see in one image it's even wearing a top hat. I actually like this sort of quirky, playful touch. Most people probably won't really notice it, but if you see it, you look at it, you think, ah yes, Subaru does still love me. Now, it's also worth pointing out that it has the capability to go along with its more aggressive new look. All-wheel drive is standard on the Outback, just like always, and a little under 9 inches of ground clearance, 8.7, and a little bit more ground clearance on the off-road oriented wilderness model, which this is not. And then there's the sizing. The latest Outback is only a little bit longer than the previous model and only about an inch taller, not significantly bigger, but each successive Outback generation has grown compared to the one before it, to the point where you now kind of struggle to call this a wagon like the Outback always has been. Between the always increasing sizing and the new boxier, off-roadier styling language, this is really starting to feel like a crossover. And in fact, the overall height of this new Outback is almost exactly the same as a Toyota RAV4, which is obviously a crossover. It seems like we finally left wagon territory behind, and that's no longer really what this car is. For further proof, compare it to the Mercedes-Benz E450 All-Terrain, which is unquestionably a station wagon, probably the most station wagon-y station wagon on the market, and the Outback is 8 inches taller in height than the E450. This is certainly no longer a car, it's definitely become an SUV. But anyway, let's move on to the quirks. And on the outside, some of the most interesting quirks are how Subaru is trying to imitate what's been successful in various other brands in some interesting ways. In back, you can see there is now a light bar, which has become a really popular car industry trend. Well, now it's on the Subaru Outback. And if you look closely, the light bar appears to be a ruler. I don't know if these marks are exact to correspond to any unit of measurement, but you really do have sort of a ruler look to the design of the rear light bar. Also in back, you can see they are now spelling out Outback, written in large print across the tailgate. You can see back there very clear. Another trend that a lot of brands are starting to do is spelling out the brand name or the model name on the back of their cars. Up front, you have a more aggressive design, which is in keeping with the more aggressive design of the whole car, but specifically you have some sort of aggressive thin running lights, as you can see, and when the turn signals go on, they're LEDs that have 3 individual lights that are kind of pointed and sharp and really give the front end look of the Outback kind of more of a purposeful design. You can see with this change and all the others, they've really made an effort to increase the style, the occasion, the pizzazz on the outside of the new Outback. Thankfully, for typical Subaru people, that is not the case in the interior. Press the Subaru button on the key fob to unlock the doors, which is kind of a neat quirk in its own. Press the Subaru button, climb inside, and you can see the interior of this car is still very much old school traditional Subaru, which means not a lot of crazy styling or weird materials or bizarre angles or designs, nothing too daring in here. Instead, it's all pretty much simple, intuitive, using very durable, basic materials. They're not the nicest materials, but they work and they'll last, and that's what Subaru people seem like they tend to be looking for. This is a well thought out, practical interior. Again, simple, basic, not stylish and cool, but it works, like most Subaru interiors always have been. And actually, it's a little bit weird, kind of juxtaposed with the exterior styling, which is kind of the moment and fresh and aggressive. The interior is still old school traditional Subaru, which will make a lot of the Subaru people happy. Now, there are a few interesting quirks in here, which I'll get to in a second, but first, I want to talk about the most notable improvement for this car, which is undoubtedly the technology. Starting with the center infotainment screen, it is a vast step forward compared to Subaru's relatively outdated, sluggish infotainment unit on previous Outback models. In fact, I just filmed a video with the new Forester, which has the old infotainment screen, and it's slow and not great. This new screen is excellent. There's a great home screen, as you can see, that shows several different tiles at once, in case you're not using Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, which obviously standard in this car. You also get excellent responsiveness from this screen, which you couldn't necessarily say about the old infotainment system, and it's very intuitive, very easy to use, well laid out, just a really nice, high quality, crisp screen, a big improvement. You also have a great camera system integrated into this screen, a lot of good angles and a higher quality camera than before, although maybe still not quite as crisp as some rivals. I also like the fact that there is a view button in the center console. You can see here with a little camera on it. You press that and it instantly pulls up the camera system. So if you're kind of trying to park in a tight space, you can just push that that and instantly see all around your car. The only thing that I don't prefer about this new screen is I miss the vertical orientation of the old one. I really like vertical infotainment screens because they kind of mirror what we already are used to with our cell phones, but that's a small drawback for all the benefits you get. And the gauge cluster screen also has some pretty significant improvements. It's now way more configurable than before. You can adjust the display over on the left side to show a wide range of different things, and you can adjust the overall gauge cluster display to show like the current vehicle status with the driver aids, or you can have a full screen map there, which means you can have a full map and music displayed in this gauge cluster right on your line of sight, which is where you want it. It's a fantastic technology improvement in this new Outback compared to the outgoing model. As for interesting quirks in here, there are a couple. For one, you have this little storage compartment above the glove box where you can stick stuff, which is actually a nice little practical touch. On the floor mats, you have a little mountain graphic. You can see a mountain and a river below it to emphasize this car's outdoorsy nature. One last quirk up front, and probably my favorite, relates to the climate control. It allows you to switch between all climate control on, front and rear, or just front climate control on, which is a pretty cool idea. If you're sitting in the car with only front passengers or you're the only person, you don't have to have all the climate control blowing into the back. Instead, you limit it to the front and it adds efficiency. It's actually a pretty good idea. As for the back seat, the first thing you notice back here is it's big. In fact, it's really big. There's a lot of space. I'm a full-sized adult and I can sit back here no problem for my head, my legs. You got a lot of room back here, which is in keeping with the Outback's growing size. The growing overall size has also led to a growing interior, which makes sense and means you get a lot of space back here, which is nice. You also have some nice features back here. You can see rear climate vents, so rear seat passengers can add to their comfort. You have two different power ports back here, USB-A and USB-C, and you have heated rear seats, which is a nice luxurious touch to add more comfort for those sitting in back. I also love the rear storage pockets on the back of the front seats. You can see there's one larger storage pocket like you always have, but then below that there's a smaller one which is specifically designed to hold cell phones. You can put a phone into this perfectly sized pocket and then you have a place for it. You know where it is when you're sitting back here. It's kind of a nice feature to see. Also worth noting back here, you have indoor cup holders, although as you can see, they're more designed for water bottles, maybe not necessarily for cups you would get in a fast food drive-through as you go through. Those cup holders are located here. You fold down the armrest in the center and you can stick your cups in, which is nice to have, but the drawback is, of course, you then have to choose between cups and a third person sitting in the center. Overall, the rear seat in this car is fine. Nothing particularly exciting or amazing, but like the rest of this interior, fine and practical. And next up, we move on to the cargo area in the new Outback. Open up the power tailgate and you can see the cargo area. This one strangely does not have like your typical rolling retractable cargo cover, but instead it has this sort of cloth affair that ties into the rear cargo hooks. Kind of strange, not really as convenient, but it works okay. Now back here, you got a great cargo area. It is surprisingly large and relatively boxy because the design of the car is boxy, and so you don't have like some teardrop shape intruding on your cargo space. You got really good storage capacity back here. You also have a couple of nice features. Over on the sides of the cargo area, handles to drop down the rear seats, which is nice. You don't always get that in this kind of small SUV segment, but you have it here. You also have these little hooks that retract out for grocery bags, fragile items like milk gallons to make sure they don't roll around back here. And you have a little cargo mat that has the mountain river graphic, just like you had in the floor mats in the car. Under the cargo mat and under the storage floor, you have a little extra cargo storage if you want to use it for that. Most of this is flat tire changing stuff, but there's this kind of little cutout which is unused where you could put smaller, more valuable items if you don't want them rolling around in back. The drawback in the cargo area is there's no household power port. You do have a cigarette lighter style port, as you can see over here, but no household back here, and that means no household in the entire car, which is kind of a disappointment. For an active lifestyle, going around vehicle, you really want a household power port. A lot of rivals have started to offer it, and it's a little disappointing not to see it in the new Outback. One other interesting quirk of the cargo area I love is on the side of the cargo area, when you have the tailgate open, there's a little Easter egg that actually displays the dimensions of the cargo area, top to bottom and side to side. There's even a little image of a dog there, but if you buy something, you're not sure if it's going to fit, you don't have to bother measuring the cargo area of your Outback. Just take a picture of this little diagram, bring it into the store with you, and you have your dimensions. It's a pretty nifty idea. Finally, let's talk pricing and powertrains. Pricing is actually an interesting discussion because it's gone up a lot from last year. The previous Outback started around $31,000. This one starts a little over $36,000. Now, part of that is because they've eliminated a base model trim that probably most people didn't get. It's not a big deal. But even if you compare trim to trim, each trim level is up between $2,000 and $3,000 compared to last year. It's a pretty significant price hike for the latest Outback. As for powertrains, they're the same as the outgoing model. That means the base model is a 180 horsepower naturally aspirated four-cylinder, or you can upgrade to the turbo motor that's in this, about 260 horsepower from a turbo four-cylinder, and pretty good performance. So let's see that performance put to the test. Let's get behind the wheel of the new Outback and see how it drives. All right, driving the new Outback. How exciting. No, actually, obviously this is not a particularly exciting car. If you're a car enthusiast, you're not going to gravitate towards this car. It's got a pretty healthy power figure. But it's become a bigger and bigger car, and so it's not particularly fast, and certainly from a steering and handling perspective, it's not particularly fun. But I will say, every time I'm in a Subaru, I am always impressed by the same thing that impresses a lot of the people who buy them, which is that it's just simple durability. This car won't set your hair on fire, it won't get you particularly excited, it's not an amazing, happy, crazy wow. But it just does exactly what you want it to do every time, and it's easy. The materials are not necessarily nice, but they work and they're durable and they're easy. Same with the tech, same with the equipment. All the buttons are easy to figure out, easy to press. There's not a lot of style or panache in this car, but it's great. It's a very usable thing, and I think that that's mostly who buys this car is people who aren't really looking for a really fun, cool, amazing experience. They just want a point A to point B practical car. You put the dog in the back or the stuff, the kids, there's space for that, and you just you get the equipment that you pay for, and it works and you're happy. And I think that that's exactly who this car is for. Now, a couple of things to note with that in terms of the driving experience. Number one, like most other Subaru models, I always find the refinement of Subaru is just a little bit less than the competition. I was just in the new RAV4 and driving a Highlander or a CR-V. I just feel like this car is just a little bit buzzier. The ride quality is just a little worse. You hear just a little bit more noise, road noise, etc., wind noise driving this car. And it's certainly true of the powertrain. Subaru uses these flat Boxer engines, which are a little bit different than regular car engines. For the purposes of most people driving, you'll never really notice, but you can hear and you can feel maybe a little bit more noise and maybe just a little bit more vibration. That's not what's intended to be the truth of a Boxer engine, but it does feel that way to me. But I'm talking about a really small amount, and it's not really that big of a deal. And again, beyond that, it's not nice in here. This is not like a luxury car, and so people who are kind of starting to get that experience from maybe Mazda or some of the nicer Toyota and Honda models will maybe find that this is a little bit off pace considering its price tag. But instead of the luxury, it seems to me they've put that into the durability and the practicality of this car, and it works just fine. Like I said, pretty decent power and performance. Of course, all-wheel drive standard. Good driving position in this car. I've criticized kind of the sizing element of it. It's getting bigger, getting less station wagon, definitely now into crossover space, which I think leaves behind a lot of people who liked this specifically because it was more car-like. However, the benefit is, you get that taller driving position that a lot of people are looking for. It does feel a little bit higher up than before, but also it feels a little bit like it more matches a real crossover or an SUV. And that's because it is one. One interesting thing I will say with regards to the styling, when the car was first dropped off, I thought it was a little weird looking, and I think that's been a lot of people saying that since it was first revealed. Over the last week, it's kind of grown on me, and it certainly, I think that the real shock to the system is that it doesn't have sort of the friendly, soft image that most Subarus do in terms of styling. It definitely doesn't look like that. It's definitely a harsher, boxier design, but actually it's kind of grown on me. I'm not sure that I like it. I think that boxy can be done right really well, and I think that this car makes some odd choices, but I'm not as like, whoa, that's weird anymore. It's definitely grown on me to the point where I'm kind of into it. Overall, though, honestly, there's just nothing really bad to say about this car. Yes, a little more vibration, maybe a little bit less refinement in the driving experience, but that's barely detectable. The powertrain is fine. The seating position is nice. This is a good car. It's a simple, basic car. It's not a fun car, but it's a good car for a broad swath of the population. I don't really have a lot of complaints knowing who is gonna be buying it. I think it's like a pretty perfect car for the buyer set, and I think that Subaru has kind of defined this market where the Outback sits, and I think they know exactly what their people want, and I think this car delivers exactly what their people want, just with a little bit more space and a little bit better tech. I think the question is going to be, are Subaru people willing to accept sort of a more daring style, because this car has almost always been about kind of a more basic sort of boring look, if you will. And so that's the new 2026 Subaru Outback. It's a little weird looking, yes, and it's really starting to stretch the definition of a wagon. This definitely feels more like a crossover SUV, but this car has a lot to love. The same durable practicality that this car has always been known for returns again, now with better technology and more space inside. If you can get past the styling, there's a lot to love about the new Outback, and now it's time to give this car a DougScore. And the DougScore is here, 48 out of 100, which puts the Outback here against rivals pretty much right in the middle, right where I expected. The Outback isn't fun or exciting, and the new one is a bit odd looking, but it's tremendously competent, practical, and solid. It won't leave you stranded, and it can handle inclement weather. This isn't a car you buy because you're an enthusiast, and that's totally okay. A lot of people aren't, and the Outback remains a great choice for a lot of people.